Welcome to the Beyond Fashion Business Podcast. Today's guest is Oliver Saunders, the commercial director at Our Legacy, one of the most well-respected cult fashion brands of the past 2 decades. This story is not about hype, marketing hacks, or chasing trends. It's about patience, product, and a relentless commitment to building something real. We talked about how Our Legacy grew from a quiet Swedish label to a globally recognized brand. We go deep on what it actually takes to build longevity in this industry, how production and relationships shape everything behind the scenes, and why staying small for longer might be the smartest move a brand can make if they want to stand the test of time like Our Legacy has. Before we get into this episode, I want to say something quickly. If you're someone who's already spent years and thousands of dollars building your brand, and you feel like it isn't growing at the speed or scale it deserves, this might help. We're offering free one-on-one coaching calls to help experienced brand owners figure out what's actually blocking their growth and what to do about it. We'll sit down with you, walk through your brand, and help you get clarity on your next steps for growth. I've been working in fashion for over 10 years, and across hundreds of conversations and dozens of consulting projects with brand founders, I've seen the same problems come up over and over again. And most of them are fixable with the right strategy. This free coaching call is meant to give you that clarity, to help you stop guessing and start moving forward with confidence and simplicity. These calls are completely free, but since they take a lot of time for me and my team, we can only offer a limited number. So if you're serious, apply using the link in the description. Now, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Cool. So yeah, officially, as for the recording, as you said earlier on, like a long time coming. I do want to get specific on the dates. I'll go back to the email to see when I actually reached out the first time, because I think it's been like a solid year and a half, if not almost 2 years, to be honest.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, but
been a very busy year and a half, so I apologize in advance.
no. I mean, I'm super curious to like maybe navigate that superficially as much as we can in a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I guess as a brief intro, obviously I know who you are and what you do, but can you give us like a 30-second introduction on you and who you are and what you do, basically?
Okay, of course, it's been my pleasure. So my name is Oliver Saunders, and I'm currently the commercial director here at Our Legacy. And I've been with Our Legacy now personally for 16 years. Can you believe it? Flown by. Yeah, that's me. And kind of it started with really, I think, really it's only four. You got the owners, of course, founders. You got Joachim, Chris, and Ricky. And then I kind of came on board, moving from Paris, and kind of the rest is history, really. It's been onwards and upwards since then, ultimately. So yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, and hopefully it continues.
Yeah, wow. 16 years. Sounds crazy. And was it always because I mean your career because I do want to set like kind of like a tone for the conversation, obviously, and there's no specific structure, but
Yeah.
since you've been, I mean, I guess when you're almost considered part of like the founding team, right? 16 years, the brand is already established, but you've been there through it all, right? So I do want to get at least an overview of what the process has looked like, kind of like the biggest lessons along the way, the biggest challenges, maybe some interesting stories, just so that people can have a good idea of really what it takes, right? And not only what it takes from the outside, what people think it takes, but what it really takes, because as you know, fashion is all about the smokes and mirrors. Everything looks good on the outside, but when you look at running a business and operating and growing something to the same level, things are very, very different from what they're perceived to be. So I think it's going to be an incredible opportunity to take a conversation in that direction. What do you think?
Totally.
Cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I guess my first question to get this started is, and you have I mean, you're a sales director, you're a commercial director, you've always been involved in sales, but how did this
Yeah.
transpire from just, doing what were you doing? Also being a commercial director for another brand into just starting with Our Legacy? Because I'm guessing it wasn't just as, oh, I submitted a CV and got interviewed
Uh,
and the pay
no,
was good, right?
no, quite the opposite. I must say, first, I've been incredibly privileged. My career has been very natural, and I've got to work with some amazing people, and I think that specifically in fashion, it's quite a small industry actually when it comes down to it. Um, and networking and these old school kind of things and socializing can really lead to opportunities. And I must say that that's been something I've been offered and I've taken. And something I never really kind of prescribed to. I started like most in the shop floor and just enjoyed being around clothing ultimately. And I never thought it would be a career, but I just really enjoyed style, not personal style, but looking at other people's style and just noticing looks and trend. And when you grow up in London, I mean, you're surrounded by subcultures and cultures, and just a fascinating boiling pot of so many things. And then that led to another, and then ultimately from sales, I got to work in fashion agency, in a clothing agency, and that led me into wholesale. Previously to that, with the shop floor, I kind of managed to look at buying, and then I navigated to behind the desk, and I kind of felt quite comfortable there. I kind of enjoyed it. It was a nice place to be. And then I got to work for brands like YMC, and then I moved to Paris to work for a brand called April 77. So I kind of been building my kind of global experience slowly and slowly. Firstly in the UK, then branching out internationally, and then just happenly that I met the guys at a dinner in Copenhagen and kind of instantly fell in love, I think, is what happened. And I saw their product and they've been working for a couple of years. And yeah, it was just something very different. And I think at that point, everything was a bit screamy, a bit loud. Everyone was trying to make a case for themselves at that point. And our legacy was just completely refined, very simple, back to basics almost. And, chambray shirts and chinos. And, and of course, we've all been influenced by Ralph Lauren. We've all had that going on. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And when I met them, I think that when I met them, the Swedish kind of natural love kind of happened for me. And I just felt for that Scandinavia purity. And I think that really hasn't changed ultimately. The product has always been in front. The planning always comes afterwards, but the product's always kind of been the key and focus to the brand and our growth and our planning and everything around it. And that's led to further conversations, and those conversations led to those conversations, and it's kind of snowballed into this kind of beautiful organic huge kind of tree we've grown here basically, and kind of branching out everywhere. But no, it's been a beautiful ride, I must say, and we've been very lucky and very fortunate because, as you say, it's cutthroat out there, and fashion industry is incredibly tough business to
Yeah. No,
be
and
in.
I think what's really admirable about our legacy, and to be honest, like for example, myself, I'm kind of like the younger generation, right? And a lot of my friends with up and coming brands, building brands, I mean, it's a common thread, right? Like our legacy is always in the conversation for the type of brands that newer generational fashion entrepreneurs aspire to build or be like in their own ways, right? But I think that that's what's very admirable about this brand is, as you said, once you understand how cutthroat, how by the book, how structured progress growth in this industry looks like, it is very admirable to see a brand achieve the success that everybody aspires to achieve, of course, but by their own rules and by their own playbook and handbook. And I'm getting in a lot of ways, I'm guessing you've had to adapt to the industry, of course, but mainly,
Yeah,
at least the perception is that you haven't, right?
yeah, yes and no. I mean, I think that, I mean, business is business. I mean, the foundation is selling product ultimately, and you need to sell it, they need to sell it, and they need to sell it for you to have another season, right? But what I think the core values, and I don't think these are written down anywhere, but the core values, of course, is patience. I mean, we always knew we had something, but I think that it's incredibly fortunate to have had that patience when you reflect, to be able to have the time to see it through, and always have that kind of the non-rush. It's always about making sure things are right and feels right. And that's, of course, when I say it out loud, feels very luxy to say it. But they're fundamentally how we did this. That's how we planted those beautiful seeds and watched them grow, and not to push or pursue where it never felt right. So whether it's choosing the right partners or being very selective on how we do those, is a joint partnership, and how business to business should work and manifest together to build that partnership, right? And that's what you need. And I think that's how we've always done everything, whether it comes to our factories, whether it comes to our wholesale partners, and then the retail partnerships, or all these kind of partnerships. They're all partnerships that you have to build together ultimately, and take those time through it. I mean, a good example is like, when people ask me, oh, you have your distribution, WC market, etc. But that is a conversation spanned over a good 12, 14 years, it is waiting. It's a waiting for that right moment and understanding when you see that moment, then you take it. But before that, yes, of course, we could have maybe taken it 12 years ago, but I don't think we'd have lost it. So it's just strategizing against when it feels right and how you make those maneuvers. And of course, that's when a little bit of trust to gut comes into, as well as the business mechanics, of course. It's hard to explain
Mm,
that out loud, but it's a little bit like just making sure everything always feels right in the heart, and
mm.
always feel good in the end. But it's important that we've always had the opportunity to take our time. And I've always been my kind of strategy subconsciously has always been to do less with more, to do more with less,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, strategy and execution through emotional and intuitive alignment, basically.
yeah,
Very interesting.
it's
Okay, I
very
mean,
much.
we'll get into the specifics of that because obviously we're a business driven kind of like platform, which I find very, very interesting. But I do want to like go a little bit back and maybe take the
Yeah.
conversation in kind of like stages, right? Because using an analogy that building our legacy has been like a tree, right? It has had a very specific kind of like growth, a very specific vision. It was planted. It was planted a long time ago. There was patience. It was taken care of correctly, and I'm sure there was a lot of like different growth stages of this tree that has been our legacy, right? So, early on, going back to when you met the founders, what stood out to you about this specifically again, other than the product, their approach to like the product and what they were building? Was there also something special about the founders, the vision, the timing, person that personally resonated? Like what were those early signs of, okay, this is maybe not long term, like this is something that has a lot of huge potential, right? But maybe just as simple as this is something that I personally want to dedicate 20 years, 15 years, 16 years so far in my life to, you know?
Well, yeah, of course, I didn't have that insight. I wish I did. We all want a crystal ball, right? And then we were maybe in different businesses, but no, I think it's like you just. I mean, it's hard to describe really, but I think it was just a combination of factors. I was just kind of awed by Christopher's kind of vision, the way he thought, a kind of he just always the way just conversations. It was just so interesting conversation about product and his references and just sharing that kind of common ground. And I think we've all come from a very, I mean, I can say it maybe. I mean, I grew up on a council estate. It's very much working class kind of background. So it's very much like I'm down for working, cracking on, and I think that we share kind of similar values, even though that maybe doesn't exist so much in Sweden. But it's very similar values about working and coming to the city and wanting to prove oneself and showing. I think that's always key to any kind of how you're going to make these things happen. And then equally, all three of them have such individual views. I mean, Ricky had his background with acne, of course, and we met there actually previously. And Joachim, just brilliant strategic taste. So ultimately, it was just like a dreamy team, and it just kind of resonated for me perfectly. And I was just like, oh, maybe I can add something to this mix. And I suppose I came with the kind of the long-term view of strategy towards the wholesale view, or ultimately how to like come and build it, work with the right partners, and take our time and how to take that growth out. We already had the little retail store back then, with our partners Nitty Gritty. So the office was out the back. We had a little store, and brands don't get to have stores early on in their careers. It is very rare. But Nitty Gritty offered us little space. We took it, and we all worked in there. That's kind of to bring it back round. We all did our time. So ultimately, a couple of us in the back in the office, dealing with everything that was going on there, of course, administration and so forth. And then we all worked on the shop floor and we met our customers. I would say they're the key to how to drive and how you build something, because we've always had our kind of the the hat on that's always been to the consumer has been foremost our most important person. And then ultimately the wholesale customers have also been our end consumers, have been fighting for the brand too. So he's always been in touch with them very closely. So I think it's been very natural in that sense of how to build that business together, leaning back to where I said,
Mm.
and so forth. Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, like going back to kind of like the stages of the brand's development. First major one, would you say it was when the brand was again very clear in terms of its vision, very clear in terms of its strategy, very clear in terms of its pacing. And again, having a store and placing a lot of focus on, again, being scrappy and the team being very involved in a lot of different aspects of the brand, but mainly being very, very connected with the people that you were selling to.
Yeah, I think it's a very hands-on approach, and I think that you need to have all those to know where to always to measure or gauge success. You kind of have to come from the bottom, right? You have to know
Mm,
what but I don't think there's any clarity on strategy. Just to be, just put it out there. I don't think there was any. We never had this top line conversations about this is the plan, this is the growth, this is where we want to be. No, none of that. Ultimately, it was just to make do. You kind of, you sold enough to make the next production, and you produced, and you hope that you produce, because obviously that's the killer in all businesses, young businesses
mm,
specifically. We happen to have found beautiful partners with Denny and the team in Portugal that supported us through thick and thin and helped us build those equal to everyone else. You have to have all those in place to be able to build this business, because you can write all the orders you want, but if you can't produce it,
yeah.
there's business, right? And the mechanics when it comes to production. I mean, this is a lot of factors in the mix here. So just about making sure the same relationships were handled when it comes to fabric suppliers, production, and all the rest of it. It's about to make it sell enough, produce enough, have next season, and these
Mm,
things slowly, just next to next. And it wasn't that kind of like, oh, 10 years, we hope for this. We knew the stores we liked. We knew the people we knew who they were. And of course, as you know, in menswear, specifically before we did women's wear, it's a very tight scene. So you were socialized networking. And I remember very early on, before I actually joined the team, the guys were already been in Paris. They already put themselves out. Sweden is incredibly good at export. They love to get out. And I think ultimately to get in that early door early on in Trenoy, I believe, and back in the day, and I think we were even opposite Acne back then. Can you imagine? But to get out and meet people on the international, so you didn't rely on your home market. And I think that's kind of been, I must say, when I reflect, key to for sure uplift in exposure. So you
right.
meet the buyers in international. Maybe take one store from London, one store from here. You build on that portfolio quite quickly, and you don't limit yourself to your potential home market as much as is always important, very important to your business.
Mm,
We It was important to get out and about quite early on, and that's how it's kind of that maintained that growth. And of course, again, it's been the aspect of kind of building that community that's worked so well for us and been so honest with it, and that's how we've approached it.
mm,
And kind of fallen into us, and we kind of always been considered the new kids on the block, even though we're 20 years in the making. you know,
yeah.
yeah,
Course. So at the very beginning, again, no strategy realistically, just good relationships with customer. Only distribution that you had early on was the store that you had as a result of, again, having these close relationships and big focus on relationship building and just making sure that you had enough profit to pay for the doing that over and over again.
yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, there was no profit then, of course. It was simply make do and massive personal commitment, of course. But it was always the vision that it would happen, and we always. I mean, you never know, of course, but you hoped it does. And you kind of, when you saw a bit of success and you saw someone say, "Oh, I've sold this well," or "I've sold this well," you go, "Oh, could we build on that? Maybe we can do more of that. Maybe we could try this. Maybe we could try that." And then it's just gone from there. I mean, ultimately, and we're still doing it like that, really. I mean, nothing really
Mm,
that sense, to be honest with you. It's just that you have a bit more, the responsibility changes. You hire staff, everything becomes bigger, and you have more responsibility, and making sure you maintain that business and do it right, and things get noticed and all the rest of it. So it's just about carving a space, and I think that's been my plan since day one. I mean, I knew that, like, with so much competition and so much out there, it's just about making sure we keep our heads above the water, and we ultimately carve a space and a position in the market.
mm.
And if we can do that well enough and the product's good enough, then we
For
have a
long
chance.
enough.
For long enough, then we have a chance. Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, and I
Wow.
think key standout is that longevity with the product, because it's like the foundations, the unwritten foundation, of course, has always been based on this kind of like forever wardrobe, right? It's like kind of
Mm,
finding. I remember Chrissy always telling me, finding your dad's wardrobe at that age. And I remember that myself as a memory. Like, you'd be very rejective of it. And then you realize, hold on a minute, those brogues from that Trickers, can I borrow those? You don't, and they've been in the wardrobe for 20 years, and they'll be in the wardrobe longer than all of us are around, right? And I think we
mm,
wanted to create that as well. We wanted to create that longevity. So we knew already that we had the stamina and the pace, to wait it out. But the product must stand test of time. And when you commit to good production, quality product, and all the rest of it, then you don't have any product coming back. You don't have all those issues, and you really resonate with the consumer. And I think early on, already at that point, we wanted to create that kind of the dependability, the reliability, very important. So you can know that that product stands for strong sourcing, strong production, and it's going to wear well, if not become better with old age, like the best of
Mm,
us, right? And then that commitment and loyalty stays with brand. And I think that's kind of how we built this ultimately.
wow,
I
fascinating. And when you go back again to those early days, and I want to keep the thought in those early days because it's when I think we have the most clarity on the most important kind of like principles, right? That you've been using over and over again in your decision making. Um, what were those? What was the guiding line in those early days, right? Because right now there's the internet, there's access to information. Uh, but before it was just as you said, product, a vision, and people that walk into a store in Stockholm, right?
Mm.
And maybe people that we meet in Europe when we travel once per year. That was the level of access that you had to information, to experiences, to opportunities in the industry. So early on, what were the guiding principles, if there were any? Was it only as long as, again, we make enough profit to do this over again and the product keeps improving based on the vision that we have and we keep understanding the customers, everything kind of like plays out? Or what do you think in hindsight those foundations for decisions were?
I think there's as true as they are. I mean, I think you spelled them out. I think there's the core values of the brand. I mean, we know that we have a responsibility. We know that we have a space. We know that we have a product that people hopefully like and wear. If they don't, it's okay. That's totally fine. But hopefully, you just find enough people that do like it. And ultimately, that's what we kept finding. We kept finding more people that like the product. And then we got very lucky with partners, the Trebiens of the world, and where we got a bit more exposure, and those also are young companies that also lifted and exposed us to the bigger world, so to speak. And you found these other stores we worked with in department stores, and yeah, and then the kind of journey kind of snowboard. I don't think it was. It's as simple as that. It sounds very easy to say out loud in reflection, and of course we worked very hard for that. That's
Hmm.
important. The conversations don't happen, and you just happen to go, "Oh, it's a great product. Let's come and see it." You strive, you work hard, you travel. I mean, I come from I pick up the phone. These is like conversations, meeting, physical meeting, travel, making sure you get the stores, making sure you follow up on sell through. It's really solid, old school kind of foundation where you're very invested in the product's success. Because
Hmm.
if you get that success, you know where that goes ultimately, and you have
Right.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think why it feels so simple to like reflect and communicate it in hindsight is because the principles for success are always simple, right? It's like anything. If you want to get in shape, you go to the gym and you eat easy, right? But when it comes to the building a brand, there are so many very technical and specific variables that are involved in the process that consistently pull you away from being in touch with those principles on a day-to-day basis, right? Okay, something as simple as focusing on the product, sure. But then one season sales are bad because some macroeconomic thing happened. And how do we figure out with this lower sales profit, this lower profit, how to figure out for production next time? And how do we navigate this entire new problem? And these little problems and challenges from a production perspective exists continuously throughout 20 years. They exist continuously with distribution and PR and management and HR. And that's why I think in hindsight it feels so simple is because it is. It's just consistently committing to those principles over long periods of time
Yeah, yeah.
is
It's stamina.
challenging. Yeah.
It's challenging, and of course, it doesn't come easy, and you you just hope that you can ride it through. There's ups and downs. Businesses close all the time. You've got stock issues, and all the rest of it. You're dealing with the operations on a daily basis, putting out fires. I mean, I think basically putting out fires for the last 16 years. I mean, now, I mean, I'm seeing now in front of us is stuff that I've been sitting on maybe for 10 years.
Hmm.
It's coming through. It's that kind of stamina, and I knew immediately after arriving in Sweden that it was a different kind of stamina, it was a different kind of pace. And I actually think that and I've been quoted to say this before, like I actually feel that I'll be very interested to know how well we have done in another city, to be honest with you,
Mm,
because it's very nicely, quietly positioned here. Influences and all the rest of it, trends, looks. We're quite alone out here. It is very interesting though whether Agni feel the same way. For instance, I don't know. It's very interesting to know because it's a little quiet part of the world where you can just crack on. And you're not kind of surrounded by the chaos of a massive city and all the things that come with it, right? The
mm,
distraction. So I think we've been quietly kind of keeping our head down and cracking on. And I think that's, as you say, it's easy to say, and of course they're the principles of how you do these things, but they really are. I mean, I think that's it because we haven't been seeking this kind of grand moment. We don't even know. I don't even know what that is. I think it's just about you just want to do more, right, and do better. I don't know. There's no end game in that sense. I mean, you're
right.
talking about future generations, right, to keep it going. I mean, there's the secrets in the name, right? It's forever our legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't. That's a great PR guys are gonna love that last sentence, by the way. Wow. And do you remember? And there's so many of them, of course, but what from a maybe operational perspective, or in terms of just the business model in general,
Yeah.
what are the biggest challenges that get in the way of you being able to commit consistently to those foundational principles? Is it's always production, as you said, or it's always like adapting to distribution, or it's it's operations and profit margins, right? Like what do you think are the biggest?
Oh, I don't really know. I think they're all big. I mean, they all come into fire at some point in your mix. I mean, I think that you know,
Let's focus early on. Early on when again, guys in the
yeah,
store with something that have potential.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that then, of course, it was always production. I mean, you always, that was always the one. I mean, you always had the conversation. Can you be earlier? Can you be better? And of course, you have to build a big team and invest in an incredible team to help with that, and an incredible team on the ground and all the rest of it. And again, massive hats off to the team and to Portugal. I mean, we've been phenomenal, luckily, with EU production. We've been phenomenally lucky with that we invested into these factories, and Johannes and the team with Chrissy, just been able to have those relationships. And again, I think it was exactly the same what happened for me, just kind of falling in love with the brand, and then them also investing in us and seeing the future potentially. And then you've built it with them, and then we've been able to deliver the product, and ultimately, then been able to create invoices, right? So,
Hmm.
they have their invoices, you create yours, and then it's business and business, and it keeps going from there. But I think production has always been the one. I think that because, like I said to you, I mean, anyone that comes to me and asks me, I mean, they're always it's the one that can really take you out.
Hmm.
Because the vision or the rest of it and drawing and design, yes, okay. But if you don't have the product in front of you and it's not up to scratch, very difficult to very difficult to survive without it, isn't it? Really, because
Right.
you're not really a product anymore. You're selling a dream. So, and we've never packaged ourselves as a dream, have we? I mean, we've always been very clear that product speaks speaks for itself. We haven't kind of put it up on a pedestal or a stage. We haven't created that around us. The product's always kind of got out there, like all the greatest brands you remember. It was very kind of rare. I mean, back in the day, I mean, pre web or social media, you had to discover. And I think our legacy's kind of been very true to sense of discovery for quite a long time. We've held on to that for a long time, even with social media, even with these, even if you talk in the inner circles how they're talking. I mean, it's still kind of the buyer's brand. We
Hmm.
still kind of resonate very strongly into that mix. So we still kind of come across as that if you know, you know, right? And I love that. And I hope that kind of prevails. And it kind of will get bigger and bigger. Of course it will naturally. But I think that's kind of been key to how we've managed to work our way through this kind of thing. Yeah,
Interesting. And do you think the most important variable to make that perception stay the way that it has been the obsession towards product and that, again, a timeless product that is not affected by trends and seasons and all these different factors?
for sure. For sure, because
Mm.
I think that even if you look at the Camion, I mean the Camion boot, I mean we own that boot. I mean, God only knows how that happened, but that boot's been with us for 10 years. and it's still it's still driving strong. So, we're very fortunate where we don't need to, we're not ultimately riding these highs and coming on lows. It's kind of like, no, they're doing right. This is
Hmm.
it's just good product. You don't need to. Then you move on to the next one, and hopefully you can make a full assortment of all great products, and the rest is history. But that's challenging, of course. But it's a good example, like where most people maybe just discover it, and I love that. I love that when that happens. I love it. But no, we've been showing that boot for close to 10 years.
Well, okay. And what the same thing, what reinforced these deep relationships to happen? I understand buyers are looking for good product, right, that they can rely on consistently. This is a perfect example, but what about another, as you said, very important partner? Um, Factories, manufacturing partners. What do they look for? What do they believe in? What makes them stay with the vision?
I think again, it's exactly the same as you're working with your buyer. You're working with pushing enough forward so you have that next like, oh, and enough of the stability. So you've also got to keep them entertained and excited. It kind of works both ways. So you also drive, you have to work with their capabilities or their capacities, etc. You understand that. Then you kind of drive and you have that vision and you kind of maneuver or you adapt and you change and develop. And they also get as excited as we do around the product because you're also at the same time you're testing with them in partnership. So whether it's application of zips or working with certain fabrics, and doing things the wrong way around. I mean, we've always been playing with fabrics maybe the wrong way around, literally the wrong way around, or
Hmm.
play, you know, playing with layers and things how they move, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. And fabrics, of course, have resonated so highly for us as a brand. And I think I don't know if you ask the general public, I think they'll talk about that feeling, what that fabric does and how it sits and how it wears. And like the same with our factories, we're kind of testing them and talking with them and developing them. So hopefully they get excited as a product as we do. And it's just not this end game of just pushing out all this product and waving goodbye. So
Hmm.
continue partnership in that sense of building something great together.
Yeah. Wow. So, as you said, relationship building, both on the distribution and production perspective. Well, I mean, on every aspect of the business,
All you
really.
got. All you
Yeah.
have. I mean, you have to have them. They're the foundation of all. I mean, you can't. You can absolutely walk away, do it, no problem. But I think that we are so invested and so conscious about the importance of our place and what we're doing and what we're providing as a service and all the rest of it, that we're invested into those relations and see them almost through. I mean, that is the core foundation to the brand. I mean, as you say, you're not going to walk into the office and see these core values written down anywhere, but they're invested into the relationship, how we've managed to find other employees, how we've managed, they're based on relationships or based on fit, and the rest is, when you find that love for the brand, the skill sets, stuff we can of course learn and adapt. But I think that's when I've found out now recently, of course, is that when you talk to other brands about companies, about how long our staff members invested, my team are 10-year plus around me. That's very rare in the industry. It's very common in Sweden, very common to stay but in fashion, that is incredibly rare. I
Hmm.
think you can talk to com employees that have been there for 20 years and, la da da. But I think
Yeah, the
that says a lot.
overstraight chrome hearts. So it's all the same when you analyze these brands. It's
Yeah,
relationships pushed. Like it's a culture because it's all driven by internal culture, right? But it's
yeah,
a culture that is almost accidentally created by a very, very strong belief and conviction and division from very, very early on without compromise over very long periods of time.
yeah,
You don't have to be strategic. It's just it attracts those people. Those people are
yeah,
out there. They're just very rare. And they
yeah,
gravitate to the also very rare companies and organizations that can provide that for them. I mean, you're
yeah.
one of them, you know?
Yeah. No, clearly. I mean, you don't, it's just that kind of, and I love that. I mean, of course, it's plus and negative and everything, right? But to see that journey through, of course, incredibly rare. And to be able to see things come a fruit, well, of course, equally as rare as that. But then just to see that, honestly, for me, I just love the team and the team that's grown with me on the same journey. And we're still learning. I mean, I want to make that very clear. I don't know, you know,
Hmm.
I like to think I know, but of course I'm tested every day, and I love that it's the kind of self-learning that's kind of the most important, humbling part of the whole journey. And all the new partnerships and all those new relationships and all those new conversations you have. And ultimately, I mean, you're just self-learning, self-teaching, and hope that you're adapting and playing that, and then that culture around you, as you say, and you're bringing that team with you. So incredibly fortunate to have the team with us on the same journey. So then you've kind of created, without knowing, of course, these values, you know, knowing that
Mm.
team, and then you're testing, and they test me, we test back, and we take a challenge, we make a move, and beautiful dynamic. It sounds very dreamy, I must say, but it kind of really is. I'm very fortunate, I'm very lucky to have that, I must say. That's how
Right.
you build.
Understood. Yeah. So again, relationship building as a foundation of operational efficiency, of distribution, of production, of vision, of internal culture, created
Yeah,
through just very long periods of time of implementing that subconsciously, almost,
yeah,
not even
absolutely.
strategically. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, you've also got the foundation, of course, is if we go all the way back, then of course
Right.
you have to have the key, right? You have a Joachim and a Chris who built this relationship on their friendship.
Mm. Yeah.
So without knowing it, they've obviously we've invested into that friendship when they met Ricardo's. Again, friendship, core value is kind of built from that and rolled out, hasn't it, ultimately? Thinking
Mm.
about it out about those core values and about how you build those relationships. And I come from that relationship building background. That's kind of ultimately how I've navigated my way through my career, how I've navigated through these things. I know that the relationships are always the ones to cherish and to maintain. I've been very lucky to know so many people in the industry for so long. It becomes something else, because you're like-minded souls, right? As you are when you watch your favorite band or whoever these are, you're together in that kind of journey. Um, and it's really beautiful to see. Of course, you work with originally way back when you worked with the system buyers, and now they're buying directors. It's a very nice journey. Maybe they're in different companies, but it's very nice to always see that through and then cherish those relationships, because ultimately, yeah, okay, one day it might not work in that certain case, but maybe the next year or 2 years it might work.
Mm.
So being having that patience is a core value as well, of course.
Understood. And when you look at, again, let's talk a little bit more about the more like maybe like strategic or tangible, practical parts of making this process viable for long periods of time, right? Because that's I think the secret is how do you replicate this process and allow it to exist and continuously improve for 15, 20 years, right? But what what ingredients do you need as a business to allow this to happen for those long periods of time in the first place? And let's go very, very specific, right? Because business and can be very complex. Like these are the most important principles. And as long as a business you have good profit margins or are able to make fast decisions or are able to hire the right people at the right time, things things eventually work out that way. Right? It doesn't feel like that on a day-to-day basis, but I think in hindsight you can have a lot more clarity on when you analyze a business and what you should be prioritizing from a more tangible perspective for this to happen. What do you think that has been for our legacy?
All the above. And I think it's like I think that ultimately, you have to. We always understood the business to business. You understand that you need to make something, and your partner needs to make something, right? So okay, so that's your foundation done there. So you have enough to put back in, and you have enough left to do something more. And everything that we've done has always been to put back, because we've always known invest back, watch it grow, invest back, watch it grow. And then when we invest back, of course, then we're entitled to invest into staff that have like-minded visions and all the rest of it, and you build up from that so you can be more productive
Hmm.
ultimately, right? Do more things. You can have a greater sales team. You can have more conversations. You can be wider. You can be having more production conversations. However, you kind of snowball that build out. Ultimately, then of course you have that kind of foundation ticking, and then ultimately you invest, of course, in, as I mentioned, that the product is then successful. So you listen, you learn, you adapt. You also have a vision, so you make sure you put that out there and you kind of take it from there. Um, yeah, I mean they're the key kind of keystones to the operational level where it's not like you've got to be very sensible about your. I think that another key element, which is a word you touched on. I think one thing that we're kind of very, very good at. And again, that comes from we're still quite small, even at this stage in the size we are now, we're, I think, 35 employees in the office now. We're still quite relatively small. And what that means is we're incredibly flexible. And when you have a little bit of flexibility, you can adapt and move quite quickly. And you can,
Figure
you
shit
can
out as you go, basically.
Yeah, you kind of, you can really adapt to a situation, ultimately, whether
Right.
good or bad, but you can really adapt and you can then take things to surprise people and you can come out with the Marnie collection. We can do the Stussies. We can do these things that maybe people are, hold on a minute. It's very, we really like that kind of mystery. I kind of keep people guessing, keep people on guard, keep people kind of challenging. And like I said, it's always about changing that relationship, right? So I think that's kind of be key. But ultimately, we've always had that kind of strong foundation of understanding, okay, yes, there's a sensible hat in regards to how business should operate, we
Mm,
think.
yeah.
And it's always been to make sure we take care of everyone that takes care of us, and you build it from there ultimately.
Right. So flexibility in order to continuously adapt to the operational complexity that is required to stay consistent with those foundational principles over long periods of time.
Yeah, that's very nicely put.
Okay.
Quote unquote. It's
Interesting.
it's like that. It is like that because it's a hard. It's like I think that that's what makes us so strong because of the if you strip it back, if you go, okay, there's assortment or there's merchandising and all this kind of things, right? We've been like, look, we really like that leather jacket. We think it should be this price. Yeah, totally. Let's do it. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's as simple as that. It sounds, again, I mean, when I say it aloud, maybe a bit dreamy, but it's reality of understanding your position in the market, understanding that where we come from, we're very grounded. So that means we're not, dare I say, greedy. And we want to make sure that people can hopefully purchase our products and there's a way into product. And we have the workshop concepts to try and get the younger generation in. We have, obviously, we're always going to seek further opportunity within the range plan. We're going to grow certain aspects. Just trying to be a little bit more organized, left and right with our strategies. And that makes us very adaptable. And then therefore you can be a little bit, carve more of a position and space for yourself
Mm,
ultimately. That kind of sensibility around kind of having an understanding of our peers, understanding what's around us, and saying, hold on a minute, actually, I think we can do that for this, and I think we can sell that. Therefore, we would create something, and it's kind of,
yeah.
that's how you do it,
Yeah.
and
Of
that's
course.
where we've seen
So
for sure.
yeah, it makes sense. So close proximity to your customers and partners to develop an intuitive sense of strategic decision making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it's all back to relationships. It's about knowing information, knowing what's happening, knowing where
Who they
those
are,
price.
what they want, what they don't like, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
clarity on vision to see how your vision and what you like and what you believe in are aligned with what they want and what they believe in.
yeah, totally. And again, pushing it. But again, we've never, I think that our biggest feedback has always been, why doesn't everyone do it like this? And we're like, yeah, I don't
Because
understand
it's
actually.
bloody difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, but I'm a bit like, it's, again, we're just here doing our thing. I mean, like it or don't like it, it's okay. There's enough to go around for everyone. It's just that this is where we're at and this is what we do.
Mm,
Um, so it can't be more complicated than that. And it's not like, people are always kind of like, oh, are you going to do this? You're going to do that? Yeah, maybe we will, maybe we won't. But it's like, right now it's this, you know,
mm,
it's not
interesting.
complicated now. And that's kind of been always the values. I mean, really kind of making sure we're, I suppose the right word, we kind of, um, um, not available, but like, we're just, yeah, dependable, available, and wearable.
Mm,
It's kind of key magic in that dust there. It's just you know, wearable. I think that's it. It's key. I mean, it definitely was when I was a kid. I mean, stuff's expensive, you know.
Yeah. Good product, good price.
Yeah, big box.
Yeah.
You hope so. I mean, it's always a challenge, isn't it? I mean, that's the biggest challenge for all of us, the reality. Because you've got a business to operate, you've got to have be founded, and of course, the bigger you get, the more challenge you get, and all the rest of it. But ultimately, of course, on the flip side, the bigger you get, the more opportunities you get as well. To
Yeah.
have better, because you get to have better everything. So you kind of strive that and kind of make that go back on the customer as well, and kind of position yourself. And I think ultimately, of course, we're kind of surrounded by companies that kind of feel like they can just keep going and going, and go up and up and up, chasing that 1%. And I'm a bit like, hold on a minute, what about everyone else? What's everyone else supposed to do? If you exclude contemporary and fast fashion, if you look at the
Right.
design, and they're just chasing that 1%. They want to keep going and they want to keep going. And for us, I'm just about, well, we're here, so let's just enjoy it. Let's just be real. And I think we'll take consumers from that will drop down from that, and we'll take consumers that will come up. We'll meet them in the
Right.
middle.
Okay, interesting. And does that philosophy of almost being satisfied, I think that's kind of like the word, being ambitious in your vision, but being satisfied as to where you are today when it comes to that vision, right? And just more of a focus of consistent improvements as an individual, as a brand on a day-to-day basis than ambition to grow financially, right? I think that really, really changes the approach if you just analyze the differences in motivations. So I think
Yeah.
the motivation is different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the motivation has always been, the product and the making sure that there's a customer for it and you sell, and your rest will go from there. The more you grow as a business, then you have to, of course, look at the financial. You have to understand those dynamics. So, absolutely, of course, you do. That's normal, but you do it at a pace that suits you and your company, and you make sure it works, and you take it from there. Like I said, I don't know what those end goals are or where we think. We just want to be better every season. I think it's always kind of been the same way. We always like to improve. That's with the product, the collection, and the sales with it.
Mm.
Continue ultimately.
Okay, and let's talk about that pace because I think pace, as you said, has been a very, very important, again, in hindsight, kind of like strategic aspect to the brand success. Again, it's a very patient brand in a very impatient industry,
Yeah,
especially at the period where you were, I mean, it was very wholesale driven early on, right? Wholesale ain't waiting for you, right?
it is. Still is. I think that's important to also recognise that that's something that's very unusual in the industry right now, because obviously everyone's turning their backs on wholesale, which I'm also uh, find interesting. It's okay. Everyone's got their own strategy, but we have a very happy place there, and as long as that continues, because there's many businesses to supply. May that continue. I hope so. Yeah, very interesting that people would move away from wholesale. But yeah,
And
for us,
how have you and the brand managed that dynamic of again the importance of patience for the brand's growth and evolution in contrast to the impatient nature of wholesale in the industry? Like how have you navigated that um, dissonance?
yeah. I mean, I think it's just about trusting the gut and trusting those relationships, and making sure that you build it in the right manner, and you don't take that triple digit growth, and you don't jump, and you don't roller coaster, and I always work on performance is the key for me. Sell through, and data, of course, is the hot word now, become bigger, and you have all your plannings and your P&Ls and all this fun stuff, right? But the hard down data was always to get the sell through, whether it was on a phone call, whether it
Is
was
are
on video,
people do people like what we sell?
and that's it, right? Then you've got it, and once you have that, then you've got it, and then it's just about making sure you manage that, and manage that growth, because very, very early on, I've seen things go quick. And I think, yes, to your point, a very impatient industry can blow things up to the biggest proportions you've ever seen, especially in fashion, and they can disappear very quickly. And I think that for
Especially
us,
wholesale.
especially with wholesale, exactly. And so I think for us, we just kind of ultimately, nah, we're here for the long run. That's clear. Let's take our time. Let's be patient here, and let's just develop it in partnership and build it together. And we'll do what's coming. But remember, it's only now that like even back then, the buyers were taking a big risk on us. And thank God they did, but they were still taking a big risk. This quirky little Swedish brand, caught up, really still no branding, no logos, no real, but it was a design aesthetic and it's a product that certainly could hold its own without all of those ingredients. But that was very, like, still to this day is challenging, compared to our peers and compared to what's going out in the market. So, yeah, I think there's like ultimately we managed to kind of work through that and quietly maneuver our way through and work on those kind of core foundations with the sales and sales history and data and just working and building on that slowly and building a great business for our wholesale customers ultimately and just enjoying that relationship and watching it blossom ultimately.
If you're watching this, there's a good chance you've already spent years and thousands of dollars building your brand. Maybe you have your own store. Maybe you've worked with retailers, agents, or showrooms. You've put in serious time, energy, and money on your brand. But even with all that, growth still feels inconsistent, exhausting, or just slower than it should be. And if that's where you're at, then this is for you. Because we're offering free one-on-one coaching calls. In this call, we'll sit down with you, walk through your brand, and help you figure out what's exactly getting in the way of consistent and predictable growth. Because most of the time, the problem isn't your product. It's that you don't have a clear model. You're trying to scale using outdated strategies that weren't built for scale. Maybe they worked 10 years ago, but not anymore. Your brand isn't the issue. You just don't know what to prioritize or in what order. This free coaching call is meant to give you that clarity, to help you stop guessing and start moving forward with confidence and simplicity. I've been working in fashion for over 10 years, and across hundreds of conversations and dozens of consulting projects with brand founders, I've seen the same problems come up over and over again, and most of them are fixable with the right strategy. That said, these calls take real time for me and my team, and because they're free, we can't accept everyone. So we've set up a short application. If you're serious, click the link in the description, fill out the short form, and book your call. Now, let's continue with the episode. Yeah, interesting. So again, belief placed on the vision because of the values, the purity of the vision, complemented by the operational efficiency because of the foundational principles that allow these risks in relationship building to be sustained over long periods of time.
Yeah,
and reinforced, right?
Playing it cool. You can have an ups and down. You just got to ride it out. You got to be like, look, it's okay. Patience is the key here. Take the stamina, work it through. There's always next season. There's always, there's another opportunity around the corner. So let's see what happens. They're the key. I mean, that's again very, very lucky to have had the opportunity to have had the time. I don't know how much of that is out there nowadays. I must say, and I think we've enjoying that to not have that against us, and that's given us those kind of built on those core foundations ultimately to build the business that we have today. Absolutely.
Interesting. Can you expand on that? Having time versus not having time.
Yeah, I mean time isn't that the greatest luxury of all. I mean, time we all, of course, obviously don't have all the time in the world, or as for now anyway, until some robot can or some computer can change that course. But time is the ultimate luxury of just seeing something through and understanding that we're here to stay, and ultimately just believing in it, and having the patience and been able to adapt the business model around it, which means that we've had to take a lot of hard hits with that kind of thinking, right? That doesn't come easy, and with a lot of sacrifice and a lot of challenges in our way to get that through. But that is about just knowing and believing in your core value, or you're deep in the bottom of the belly, that what we have in front of us is just great and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And if we 20 people, we share it with 200 million people. It's all good. It's the same
Right.
feeling. So yeah, again, it doesn't come down to this kind of ultimate dream state kind of vision of top line where everything's going to land. It's just about knowing that it would be great to enjoy this process with more people and let just enjoy the ride. And that's the luxury of time where we've seen it and watched it come through, whether it's unpacking and steaming the collection and being in a little place or a little room or sharing beds or sharing this or sharing that. That's you have to have had that to come to where we're at now, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
enjoy
Time
that.
as the ultimate resource. Because I think people don't have that perspective, right? Because sure, like patience, like the resources required for patience in strategy or in thinking are superficially money, right? You need a business that works. If the
Yeah,
business works, you can be patient.
yeah,
But even more important than that, you need time as an ultimate resource of patience because none of that would have mattered if Joachim was 80 years old, 70 years old, 60 years old, even 40 years old, right? Because when you do have that time, you have that perspective, you have the energy, you have the envision, you have the drive, you adapt yourself as an individual, as a leader, you evolve with the brand, right? And all
exactly.
those variables completely change with time.
Exactly. And that's what's happened because ultimately, of course, you're talking about the foundation of where this whole profitability or this wealthy outcome or vision has never been on the table. It's been about that shirt, that pair of shoes, or what we're doing here. It's never been about that big drive. So when you don't have that in the room, you take the element away, then you have the patience and the time that goes with it. But again, that's why I say that's a luxury, because of course there can be other elements of other people come in and say, "Oh, we need to do this by this amount. We need to have to do this. We have to do that," and that wasn't our thing, and it still isn't. It just becomes something different when you have, like you say, back to responsibility of growth and how you provide a solid, comfortable business to make sure that you can have employees and everyone's taken care of. Yes, that changes, of course it does. But back then, it still hasn't been this kind of this big drive. So we've been managed to have that kind of time and patience towards the distribution and building this business and watching it blossom around us. It's great.
Mm, okay. Wow. And okay, I think we've covered kind of like the main foundations, right? The foundational principles that I think everything when it comes to brands development can go back to that, right? Uh, Patience and pace, commitment to product, like almost uncompromisable commitment to product, focus on relationships, patience, relationships, product. Do you think that would be a good patience,
Mhm.
patience, product, relationships, belief that leads
Yeah,
to culture? Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Mm.
It's all there. It's all in the mix. Because you
Mhm.
always had the belief, because that gives you the patience. Because you meet people that be like, I don't know, and you're like, it's okay. It's it's okay. It's okay not to make, to not like something. I mean, that's normal. You shouldn't like everything, but that's in this industry. There's a lot of competition. You've got to take your time to travel through it. You've got to get through the noise. You've got to weigh that out. If you believe strong enough in your product, and that goes for anyone. I mean, that's how it should be. You've got to hold tight to that vision. The
Mm.
rest through ultimately.
Yeah. And when you look at that formula, are all of those things individual parts of the formula, or do you think product is still the most important ingredient to everything?
Product always.
Mm.
Yeah, it all leads back to product.
Because at this point, where the brand's more advanced, you could lose your track when it comes to the belief. You can get the wrong people. You can screw up with the relationships. The founders might quit or become the wrong leaders for the next stage of the brand. But if you just understand the product and where it wants to grow and what it wants to evolve to, then you have a compass for the next stage. You have a compass for the future.
I think so.
Mm.
Ultimately, ultimately, I think that's what it all comes down to, and I think that's what our consumer wants as well. And I think because we're not screaming and shouting around our product, that ultimately that's what they're drawn to us
Mm.
about. And it ticks the boxes for them, um, and that excitement hopefully is there like it used to be, and how it is for me every day.
Yeah.
I don't work in that sense.
Well, yeah, very interesting. Okay, Ollie. I think with the next 30 minutes, if we have time, and by the way, if you need to leave early, let me know. We can cut it
Oh,
out
no
short
problem.
because I could talk about these things forever. Um,
A
now that
pleasure.
we've set up, I think a foundation for the brand success that I needed to be understood before we talk about anything more specific. There's two more things that I want to talk about if we have time again. Number one, again, all of this seems simple and easy, but everything is just a challenge on a day-to-day basis. Everything feels like a challenge on a day-to-day basis. It feels simple in hindsight. I would
It
like to
is.
understand a little bit more about the biggest challenges that you think you've had to go through as personally and as a brand, of course, to make this happen in the first place. And secondly, how this has applied more specifically into the commercial development of the brand, since that is your specific expertise at this point, right? So
Mm.
let's start with the first question. What were those big, stormy, are we doing the right thing events that have happened for the brand? Because again, there's a lot of day-to-day fires, but every brand that's been around for 20 years has, three, four almost existential
Yeah.
level
Yeah,
challenges.
no, it's important. I mean, of course. I mean, you said it now in hindsight when you meet it. I think for us, was probably COVID. Ultimately, I think we hit that wall full pace, like full hard, full speed. We've been driving, we've been doing our thing, you know, foot to the floor, just cracking on. COVID came, and then what COVID brought was complete unknown. And ultimately, when you're faced with unknown, all the planning in the world just kind of throws out the window, and you got to relook at everything. You got to relook. You got to reanalyze. What have we got? And for us, ultimately, personally, I believe that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to us.
Hmm.
Because what happened then is that unfortunately, and I say this, it was a very difficult time because we had to let go of staff. We definitely hit something we didn't know what was going to happen. We had to. Our reaction was obviously we had to strip it right down. We didn't know whether, of course, well, no one knew anything really, did they? I mean, it was a very different course here in Sweden, but the rest of the world, of course, with everything. It was a horrible, horrible situation and very, very difficult time in the globe. And fingers crossed that never happens again. Um, but yeah, it happened, and we faced an uncertain future. And with that, what happened was that we re-looked at ourselves. We re-looked at what we've got going. We took that moment to understand. Okay, let's strip it down, see what we've got, and let's hope. And what we didn't realize, of course, at that point, that ultimately that all those years behind us, we'd built this kind of consumer base, that just this beautiful foundation of consumers that just were happy to purchase a home ultimately. And they were there to support us through that. And you'd hoped always that, you've built something, but you never know, right? But you never really know. And I think that was the most beautiful moment where we managed to actually had an incredible time. And we managed to have production, we managed to kind of work it through again, managing those relationships, right? Because it was the same situation. These guys were like, whoa, we don't know what our business is going to be like. And we're like, we're here. We're here. We can do this. Let's do this together. So after all those years of relationships, also with our factories, they supported us. We supported them. We managed it through together because we couldn't bear the idea of seeing them close either. So we drew together as one unit to help each other ultimately. Um, and we came out of that situation bigger than ever.
Yeah.
But very fresh perspective about the. I mean, almost, I suppose it's a little bit humbling, right? It's a humbling situation regarding what you actually want. And the question was asked, yes, we need to see this through. We need this to survive. No matter the sacrifice, whether I had to leave or we obviously had to, unfortunately, yes, we had to do the same. People had to leave us. But it wouldn't have mattered if I was part of that journey, not because I would have loved every second anyway from the sideline because I knew I knew from plus 17 years ago when I met the guys that they're all good. It's going to be good, I knew that bet for one. I knew that was going to be right, and I'm still seeing it's right to date. So yeah, it was a big moment, but that was the biggest rock, I would say, to the foundation there. But I think again we drew back on those core values about the existence of the brand, what do we want from this, and our position, and what do we want to get, and how do we want to go, and we came out bigger and better actually ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like personal trauma, right? And when you're going through personal trauma, it feels like the worst thing in the world. But in hindsight, there's always either a lesson or a remembrance. I think that that's the same for any business because it becomes almost like a living organism.
Yeah,
And again,
and
those very difficult periods are perfect opportunities to remember and either reinvent or re-solidify those
yeah.
foundations that over span of 15 years, 20 years are easy to forget or get distracted on or lose specific direction in.
Yeah, no, totally. And Chris, I mean, he was just on fire. He was just like, no, I've got all these ideas, I want to do this. And we were very limited resources because, of course, the team was down, production was down. So we had to come back with the kind of like best of a little bit. But one of the things that kind of came out of that was not only about finding ourselves and finding our customer and kind of also growing, which was phenomenal, and then kind of regrouping, was then we managed to then create a Stussy relationship. And that's a brand that, of course, growing up, I was like in awe of, and one of the best distributed brands out there and incredible history. And that kind of really took us up a notch and put some real wind in the sails because that ultimately, with the millions and millions of fans out there that they have, that kind of introduced us to a whole new audience. And that kind of brand awareness kind of grew very quickly and very fast. And that
Overnight
was
success, 20-year overnight success.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel funny because I'm using this all the time because people are like, "Oh, he's so good," But again, it's 20 years in the making. This isn't overnight, It's a lot
And
of work.
a single event might make it feel or make it perceive like it was overnight, right? Because people perceive just what they're seeing. And what they're seeing is a Stussy collaboration or LVMH investing in the brand. But what they're not seeing are, again, the days in the store, the conversations with the buyers 20 years ago, um, figuring out COVID.
Yeah, exactly. All the above. So yeah, that's a standout to answer your question. That's a massive standout for me. There's probably plenty, there's thousands more of situations, but that's the big one. I think that's the one that really kind of like, oh, hello, here we go, situation. Let's
Mm,
get on with
yeah,
this
it's
now.
just
It's the one.
interesting. And again, it goes back to what you said, right? Like patience and timing. Patience allows for timing to happen. Timing usually takes a long time for it to flourish. Timing sometimes goes against you, COVID.
Yeah.
Timing eventually goes for you, a Stussy relationship. Do you think that was kind of like the tipping point for the brand? Again,
Yeah.
a tipping point that happened because of the 20 years of foundations being laid, right?
Yeah.
But at least the tipping point that everybody kind of like can associate the brand with.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we definitely saw something new for ourselves. We saw another thing again, kind of striking at that kind of different audience awareness and also the press. I mean, the press with us, the press then have kind of been with us on that journey, and I think they've always been around and for sure have seen us and have kind of noted our rise and all the rest of it. But I think they also took another turn on us. I think they've kind of like, oh, hold on, these guys have got something here. These are worth watching. This is something to look at. And of course, the addition of women's wear, building up all the different categories, and again keeping their head down and then working on the other collaborations. So we saw obviously what they could provide us, so that was obviously nurture those relationships and build something new friendships and see what they can bring us, and building on that was phenomenal work by Joachim, phenomenal work. And yeah, just I think enjoying that. But then ultimately I think one other critical maybe decision I was that I wanted to maneuver us into designer world. And I kind of at that point, pre-COVID, had kind of been enjoying a contemporary positioning, if you want to talk about like general positioning and like the classic department store.
Hmm.
And kind of like, I just wanted to see another opportunity for us. And especially with the vision of the product, especially with the runway, especially with everything we're doing. And I just also want to enjoy the flexibility of movement within a different kind of price position to be able to go up and down, and not kind of held. And kind of contemporary kind of held us a lot, positioning wise. Too much conversation. So ultimately, then maneuvering into a designer remix where we're kind of the obtainable brand, against our peers and all these brands we've grown up and all the houses, and kind of pitifully kind of pushing ourselves into that remix. I'm I'm sure has helped us on our journey for a second wind for sure, in uplift and now kind of how we've seen and how we're looked upon. And I suppose I just wanted us to be taken a little bit more seriously because I believed in it so much that I wanted everyone else to go with us on this. And there
Hmm.
was work behind that, buyers believing us, positioning, and all the
Right.
rest of it, incredibly difficult. But that's really paid off, and we're really enjoying that moment and really enjoying our positioning right now, I must
Right.
say.
Yeah. So increasing price prime positioning just to have more flexibility when it comes to strategy with product, with everything.
Yes.
Um, because I mean it was mainly driven by what, like higher price points, I'm guessing, right? Higher price points give you
No,
higher margins give you
not,
more flexibility, or is it
no,
just
no, not,
being a
not at all.
well-respected brand?
Not at all. I think it's more about the product, actually. Again, to go back to that point, I think we were pushing a bit more of a fashion look, and I wanted us to enjoy that moment as much as the foundation might be on a button-down shirt, whatever. It was just about the opportunity of being able to push the other looks, and also, again, it was to enjoy a far wider spectrum of price point, not being kind of the top end of something. I'd rather be in the middle and enjoy both sides of it. Um, but then, when you entertain, you kind of been around the Lemaires, the Acnes of the world, you get a different notoriety. It's a different position. And, we've really still, of course, carving our position here. Don't get me wrong. We're still trying our best here, but that's really moved for us. And I think hopefully we enjoy it even more so. But I think that's kind of like, you know, not price led, it's product led. And again, it comes back to everything.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, price being a result of understanding, again, foundational principles, product and your customer. And
Yeah.
understanding your brand positioning is just a layer of understanding your customer.
Yeah, exactly that.
Maybe a more,
Exactly.
okay, maybe more an aspirational version of understanding your customer, right? Because you have this is who our customer is, what they believe and what they want. But maybe this is what we believe our customers should want and should buy and should like.
Yeah, and I think it's enjoying an environment where there is this kind of more freedom, and I think that the designer remix on the international level gives you that kind of freedom to kind of play with those looks whilst challenging yourself ultimately, and you're learning something new. So again, to be in a different kind of on a different playing field, a couple of in the Premiership, gives you drive in another way to score different goals, right? So it's a different way of handling your business and a different way to operate. So it's again, I think, going back to that kind of, especially my own self journey about learning and developing and challenging, and I love the challenges. I love that way of working, and again, every day is a new challenge. Every day is something different, and just kind of self-learning mission. And again, that designer floor gave us that. It gave us a new challenge. It gave us
Hmm.
something to try for, and when that happens in front of you, like, yeah, I want to do it even more.
Right. Yeah, fascinating, Ollie. Okay. And again, I don't think we'll have enough time to kind of like dive into this deeply, but how is everything that we've spoken about reflected itself in your commercial strategy? Early, and this is a very broad question, of course. So let's just break it down a little bit first.
Yeah.
So before, very wholesale driven. After, very DTC driven. Like what is this like stage? Because I think you can think of the brand of main stages of evolution, right? Uh, with very strongly laid foundations. I
Yeah.
think we've explored that general process with the brand, generally speaking. But what does this exact process look like more for like its commercial development? Before, big focus on wholesale. Now, much more focus on D2C. Or is it still wholesale? It's still the same thing, still the same foundations.
Still the same foundation, but yes, they ultimately will shift. Yes. Um, And that is because ultimately we have an opportunity and a very privileged opportunity where we've been able to save enough pennies for us to then expand retail. And when you can expand your retail bricks and mortar, of course, you're going to then level up on your percentage of what it takes ultimately, right? That's a no-brainer. So we're still a wholesale brand through and through. We're going to enjoy that for as long as we can. And the retail element is the ability to showcase your product, this ability to land your vision, this ability to land, you know, something very, unique. And people don't talk about stores as much as they used to, but it's kind of, it's a nice way now to go back to that and go, I remember, I mean, the stores I remember are, of course, the stores I walked into. It's like, whoa, it's not an online store that I felt, whoa. I mean, of course, there's great websites, don't get me wrong, but it's the stores, the physical stores, and that connection that can really drive you in another way, and the personnel and the staff with it. And I think that's so core to the brand that we need to give that experience back. And the staff we hire and the people we bring in and all those building those relationships kind of all navigate back to everything you remember as a teenager, being on the shop floor with that guy that just said, you should be looking at this. And you're like, yes, yes, please. So yeah, ultimately to answer your question in a more business-like manner, yeah, you could imagine that we'll probably navigate towards a 50-50 outlook. I could imagine. But wholesale will still be an important ingredient because I think it's just one of the best and ultimate relationships I just enjoy the most as a company, and a challenging one, and it drives us to succeed. And retail will build on those beautiful building blocks as the online plus the physical. You have that perfect, I hope, we think, balance. If that would be the dreamy state to be in. So you can ride both out ultimately, no matter which way this planet moves or which way things go up and down, because ultimately, of course, it always will do. So you have that little bit of foundation on both sides ultimately, but you don't turn your back on either. You just enforce and grow both ultimately. Sorry, I can't hear you. Unfortunately, you're on mute, I
Oh,
think.
sorry, Ollie. And again, going back to those same foundations, like different distribution channels, just as a way to reinforce the principles that have always guided the brand, a way for people to see the product, a way for you to build the relationships with the customer, um, and that over and over again through different distribution channels. Earlier on, it was a bigger focus on wholesale because relationships focus.
That's how you got the word out. That's how you did
Yeah,
it. I mean, that's how you did it. That's how you become global. I mean, it's the
yeah,
fastest way to approach it. It's nothing more complicated. The web was
right.
still in infancy. The web is still there, of course, and all the rest of it. But wholesale was the ultimate way to about to spread the word and get the product out there and to the stores you've heard about and hopefully have had the opportunity to have visited. And you're just like, look, I love it. I think we could do something in your store. You know,
Mm.
nothing's really changed from that kind of motive. I mean, it's just always been that kind of goal. Like, oh, I love that store. It's beautiful. Let's be there. And, meet those people. Then they grow their business. You get their feedback, and you hopefully do the same with your own retail remix as well. But you always have that balance. I think is important. Who knows what's right or wrong because there isn't any. But that's kind of our hope, and that's what our belief will be for the future. The brand where we can really reinforce it with the showcase around the world of a retail outlet on the backdrop of a beautiful website and a beautiful wholesale distribution.
Hopefully, a store in Tokyo.
Yes,
We'll see, we'll see, we'll see. No, not too much information here. Interesting. Okay, and just to conclude the conversation, Ollie,
yeah,
because again, I think the conversation has been a great reinforcement of again those foundational principles, right? Which I think can be almost like very cheesily called almost like the strategy of patience, which I think is a way to summarize the reason why the brand has been so successful. Um, and I would think personally, and you can add to the formula if you like, just to simplify everything that we've discussed. Um, pace, product, relationships, belief.
mm,
Plus, and this is the plus because this is what's crazy, right? These four things are the four things that are the most difficult to implement and execute on. And they're the ones that you do for so long that nobody sees and feels. And then there's a fifth one, timing, which is the one that only happens as a result of all those four happening through long periods of time. But it's the one that everybody associates the brand to.
yeah.
What do you think was that part of the formula for this brand? when was what was the timing shift? What was the timing opportunity that really changed everything?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean every I'm gonna take a big brush here, but I think that the time reading opportunity and timing together, right? So that comes from day one. I don't think it's, there's always certain moments that have given us certain wind in the sails and give us opportunity and open the doors and all the rest of it. But ultimately, every decision we've made, we've hoped to pay back, and that's been paced out for the last, personally, 16 years and 20 years for the brand. And it doesn't matter where that relationship is. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. You're just lucky enough, and maybe the sixth element, if that was five, maybe the sixth is just a lot of luck thrown in the
Yeah, no,
mix.
and that's what I mean, like timing, because timing is being at the right place at the right time, right? I think that if you reinforce those like important principles, you become better at spotting opportunities, right? And being able to take advantage of those things in the first place.
Yeah,
But there
yeah,
always is, okay, I had no like we didn't plan for this, and it was such an important aspect for the brand. That happened as a result of being able to be patient for long periods of time, more than
yeah,
because of our ability or our product or our strategy, right? It's
yeah,
earned
totally.
luck. It's earned luck.
Yeah,
I think.
it's
I
earned
guess we
luck.
could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it feels like it right when I said it out loud, but it's still you still I think like not we've never oversold ourselves, right? There's a very core foundation thing maybe to summarize on here. Like, so like when you know your capabilities, I think it's important to recognize that you can't, especially in this industry, you can't overpromise and underdeliver. And it's all about, again, that reliability and keeping one's head down and giving that opportunity. So you can say we do these deliveries, we do them. We open those delivery windows or those opportunities and those looks for them, and we do it. And if you keep doing that, and then the buyer understands and recognizes, then you create, the profit and the cash flow and all the rest of it that's so important to any business like our own. So I think, again, it's that kind of uniqueness of understanding timing, but then not overselling it or overshooting yourself, where you can say, actually, we can't do that now, but we can do this. And I think that's, again, going back to your 5 points about staying very strong core value, about owning your positioning and understanding how that's going to work with your product and what you have available and your resources at the time. And then slowly but slowly, you can do more and more and more because it feels right. But you always sharpen, you always get sharper, you always try and find a way to navigate that and give an opportunity for both businesses to succeed.
Right.
That's kind of key to everything as well, I must say. There's a kind of in the mix, but it's a summary of all of it. But that's kind of key, because I think that I know that you get approached and people talk to you and, oh, I've sold to this store, and I'm like, oh, that sounds great, but remember, you're not going to get another chance.
Hmm.
You know, make sure you feel it's right. Sometimes it might not feel right now, or it's a positioning, or it's marketing tool, or it's these kind of things. But I think for us, we've been very privileged about to have these opportunities and see them through and take them when it felt right to us, and to not oversell it and not to undersell it and all the rest of it. So we just feel that happy medium, and then build this business together. So it kind of goes back to the business relationships, right? It's
Yeah.
very important, very, very important.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So I think in that case, a better kind of like word way to like summarize the formula would be product, relationships, belief, pacing, and the ability to take the right opportunities at the right time.
yeah, yeah. There's your book.
Okay.
That's how you do it.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day would be a good
That's how you, that's how you do
wow.
it. That's how you do it. You know, you got to take care of all those elements, right? I mean, ultimately, just a strong foundation of the long run. But it's good. Again, everyone has a different pace. Everyone has a different understanding of what they want to achieve, and let them do it. Whatever suits you, whatever suits you. I think that's the game plan, and this ultimately uniquely suited us, and it still does. And we still work by those principles ultimately.
Right. Because the difficult thing, the difficult thing about these simple principles are that they're the ones that you developed that work for your brand, and your responsibility as a business owner is to find and develop what those principles to you for your brand are.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Wow.
and I think now, like even more so now, I mean, you talk about the return of product, you would talk about the return of like, wanting to have some longevity, right? You talk about those kind of things. These are all the things that kind of come back to where we've started from. So it's important that we kind of haven't ever shouted about it. We've always just done it. So it works perfectly when the market turns. You talk about the row, you talk about non-branding. Well, you talk about quiet luxury. Well, we've always done it. It's funny how the market kind of has adapted to kind of position and kind of labels things, but then we've just kind of quietly done it. And I think, especially this season coming out of back of Milan, you've noticed a real shift in the buyer where they've kind of really, as much as the press as well, really kind of understood, wow, actually, that's what it's always been about. Why haven't we just kept doing this and do it more of it? And I'm like, yeah, but for me, it's like that. There's never going to, fashion has this kind of like always waiting for this big wow moment, And I think we're kind of, I don't know when that's going to come. And I'm a bit like, I'm sure it might come and that'd be great. But right now, let's just do some businesses in front of us. Let's keep it simple, nothing more complicated than that. Let's find our path and journey together.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a intrinsic desire and urgency for the future that kind of like drives the industry, and therefore drives brands and its founders to make decisions. When in reality, it's not about the future as much as understanding your past.
Yeah.
And maybe just maybe understanding how to redefine it and readapt it to the present, but never to some urgent imaginary future situation.
No, you never know what's around
Ironic.
it. Yeah, it is. It's a bit like that, but let them play in that world. I think we all drive it and we all love the wow. Don't get me wrong. We want everyone wants to shine a new car, but like right at the end of the day, you need the car that you want to get in and just starts and works every day.
Yeah. Very Swedish. You are becoming Swedish.
I've become very Swedish.
Yeah,
It's nice. Nice that
Hey, I'm in Japan, right? I mean, they're not the same culture, but they do speak the same language in a way, like culturally speaking. So I get it. I get it. I get the peace that comes with that mindset also. But amazing, Ollie. I think that's a great way to kind of like summarize the episode in the conversation. Obviously, thank you for the time. It was a very, very valuable conversation, very, very valuable perspective. I wish we had more time to get a little bit more about your own personal challenges and perspectives, but maybe a part two when you visit in Tokyo, huh?
Yeah, I would love that, and also just super thank you for being patient with me. I mean, incredible. I love that, and privileged to be on your show. And thank you ever so much for having me. It's very, very kind of you.
If this episode resonated with you, and if you're building a real brand, but growth still feels inconsistent, overwhelming, or just not to the scale your brand deserves, we're offering free one-on-one coaching calls. And this call will help you identify exactly what's getting in your way and what to do next. These calls are limited and application-based. So if you're serious, click the link in the description, fill out your form, book your call, and if we think we can help, we'll confirm your spot. Hope you enjoyed this podcast episode, and see you on the next one.